Cloudy start to your Tuesday. Afternoon clearing tomorrow. Some sunshine.
Welcome, everybody, to the November 9th Administrative Committee meeting. To my right is Jim Boland. To my left is John Weber. To his left is Acting City Supervisor Jen Piffner. And I'm Dan Carscallon. First thing on the agenda is the disbursement report for October 2015. And Don Palmer will present that. With us, as always, is Don.
How you doing?
Good.
All right, so I have a disbursements report for the month of October. There was $2,019,763.98 expended in the month. And as I reported in the last month's disbursements report, it's always higher and then it falls back down because of the accruals that we do in the month of October. So a lot of the October invoices get posted back to September. So that's what's going on again this month. And then the other outstanding thing in this particular run is a lot of annual memberships and annual license fees that are due, and I'll go through those in a minute. The other thing that is different about this payroll run is twice a year we have 26 pay periods. This is the month that we have 3 of those. So payroll was $1,264,781. Professional services, this is where all those annual fees are, was $389,133. Annual memberships or annual fees for software licenses, that sort of thing, out of that number was $168,000. WITCOM's annual quarterly fee was $128,500. PBAC's annual fee was $40,000. Public health was $6,485. There was a DEQ fee, drinking water fee. Didn't know we did that, but we do. Finding the center was $2,650, and then the CETA annual fee of $5,279. That's the bulk of that $389,000. Contractual payments was $33,640. Supplies $19,413. Construction $5,125. All these lower numbers were reflective of the fact that of my earlier comment about the accruals. Equipment $7,508. Improvements $5,425. And then insurance is an annual insurance fee for our liability insurance is $239,100. Those total of the categories, $1,969,041 represents 97% of the categories I mentioned. So with that, I'll pass this around for your signature. If you have any questions.
Anybody got any questions for Don?
It's well explained.
Don generally gets it right out there for
We
us.
have to change the name since administrative is doing it and not
Oh, yes.
Public Works Finance, but I'll scratch Wayne out.
I forgot to mention that to Cassie. We're working on our year-end audit stuff, and it's ongoing.
Kind of stretching this out since it's really our only regular agenda item.
I can talk more.
I figured you could.
It'll mostly be hunting stories, though.
With that, that is the end of our regular items, and now we're moving to reports. First up is the single stream recycling implementation status. Tim Davis is going to present that. Good afternoon. So what's going on with these beautiful green carts we're going to be getting?
We ordered carts the Monday following City Council when we discussed the mitigation plan. They were scheduled to arrive in mid to late November. We got our first load the last week of October.
Good.
All of the old carts were still in that south parking lot of the recycle center, so they kind of had to stop the delivery of those until they could get those moved out of there, which they should be done this week, and then we'll get the new carts continued to be delivered. They are changing the lids out. They ordered the new ones with just plain black lids. If you recall, we ordered the original carts with the IML labels with the acceptable and prohibitive items, so they're going to swap those lids back and forth. Like I said, toward the end of this week, they should have the south lot freed up, and then they'll get a hold of Toter and they'll start shipping those carts again, and then they'll start putting those lids on, and we're looking at probably 2 to 3 weeks to get those delivered. We're going to be running right up against the holidays. We've got Christmas and New Year's, which both fall on a Friday. LSI's plan is to basically distribute these carts on the weekends with their current staff. So I think the 1st of January is probably a little over optimistic, but not impossible.
As far as implementation?
Implementation. I think realistically we're probably looking at that second week in January, but I don't know yet until the carts are on the ground, and we'll see how things are going. I've met with LSI several times since I reported to council. We are working on putting together new routes specifically for the recycling.
So different than regular garbage routes, or?
Somewhat. We're going to have about 450 stops that will be affected by day changes of garbage collection as well. The new recycling routes basically had to be built from scratch because it's a totally new route on the same day. So we're just about done with that. Right now they're just going to work on the apartment routes. What else do I have? Oh, the other thing that we talked about was the information packet content that we'll be delivering with the carts, and we got that narrowed down. Moscow Recycling developed a new pamphlet that they'll be distributing down at the recycle center, which we also want to include with the cart delivery, that speaks specifically to single stream recycling, the kind of instructional stuff. Again, we'll send out that list that was with the original mailer of the acceptable and prohibitive materials, and then we put together a little instruction sheet with frequently asked questions and how far to set the carts apart and this and that, kind of like what we did when we rolled out the original roll cart program. The other thing that I want to do and include in that informational pack is little refrigerator magnets with calendar and schedule, especially for the single-family residents, since they'll be getting picked up on the same day as their garbage, but we'll be moving to biweekly collections. So been working with Trent a little bit on that. When those carts get on the ground and I can pin down a definite date and we know when we're going to start, he said he can have those built to me in 2 weeks. So we'll just simply include those in the packets. The other thing that I wanted to mention was Councilman Steed had sent me an article several weeks back about McCall and Valley County possibly going to single stream. Talked to LSI about that, and Andy Boyd has contacted Lakeside Disposal, and they did show some interest possibly in some of the carts. So he said they are a ways out, but they're staying in contact. So we're moving ahead. Questions?
So what potential, do we know kind of what area is the potential for getting a day shift yet as far as the collection day? Or is that still kind of in the ether as far as whose days are going to change?
Like I said, there's going to be about 450 accounts that will be affected, and they are going to go around and door hang those as soon as we get those routes pinned down.
Okay.
And like I said, we're almost there. I mean, we're within probably a week or so.
You think they'll start running those before they start?
I don't think so. I think they'll wait.
Do it all at once?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
Now, the carts are coming without lids, and we're going to put the lids on them.
They ordered the new ones with plain lids, but they aren't attached to the cart. They're basically palletized, so they wouldn't have to pull the new ones off.
Okay.
So essentially what they're doing is taking the lids off the old carts, they'll mount them on the new carts, get those delivered, and then the new lids that come, they'll put on the old carts.
Okay.
So they'll be totally intact.
Okay.
They'll be easier to sell that way, too, with a plain lid.
Was Joe able to use 1,100 of those in Nez Perce County like he talked about?
I haven't heard anything on the Nez Perce County thing yet. I haven't spoke with Joe personally since our meeting. I've been working with Andy and Lori, but I'm staying on them about that, so.
Good.
Another
Anything else?
thing that Walter sent out a couple weeks ago was an article in the New York Times about single-stream recycling and how the difference in the value of those recyclable materials is changing day to day. And that brought to mind the idea of what's the EPA rules on storage of bales of single-stream recycling?
I don't know that there's any storage issues. What you run into, Jim, when you bale that material, the integrity of the bales tend to go downhill after they're stored and moved a couple times. They tend to want to start falling apart, and then you end up having to rebale them, and it becomes kind of a mess. As far as the markets, and it's not just single stream, it's any recyclable commodities, whether it's source separated or single stream. Markets are going to fluctuate. I mean, that's just the name of the game, you know. I've been in the business for over 30 years, and it goes up and down, and the market is what it is.
It wasn't that long ago that scrap iron was over $55, and now it's
nothing.
$5.
Yeah.
And they're
That
losing money
changes.
at that. So
And there's a lot of different things.
So that's my
cause
point
that.
about that, is if it's not worth anything right now, can we pile up the bales, and are they durable enough that you could save them
There have
until?
been folks that have tried that in the past, and unless you have a lot of inside storage capacity, it's pretty tough to do.
Unless you tarp them like haystacks or something like that.
imagine cardboard getting rained on.
Oh, yeah, that's not going to do
And you can imagine newsprint too. I mean,
Exactly.
most of it's going to be fibrous material, and once it sets for over a month, those bales will just start to kind of, yeah,
They're going to pick up
yeah,
any moisture in the air, I know that. so.
yeah, and discolor and everything else.
The other thing that goes along with that is it said that some municipalities were incinerating and generating power from that. Because that's pretty much a clean source. There's not a lot of wet garbage in it, and you could incinerate that and run a steam turbine and generate electricity and have less greenhouse gas emission than hauling them to the MRF. Is
And
that a possibility?
you know, incineration isn't very feasible, especially on our scale. I mean, we're really pretty small. I will say that where our garbage is hauled down to Finley Buttes, they do recover the gas off of that landfill. And I would invite any of the counselors, anytime you'd like to go down. I've taken Gary down there, and it's a pretty interesting tour. And they have these big Caterpillar generators, and they filter that gas off the landfill, and it runs through these big Caterpillar generators. And they actually have an onion dehydration plant right next door, and they have encapsulated water that they run through a closed cycle to cool those big cat engines, and they use that heated water in the dehydration process of the onion plant. It's actually quite interesting.
So they're generating power, plus they're getting all the engine heat and reusing that as
Absolutely,
a raw energy
yeah,
source.
yeah.
That's a good idea.
That's off the garbage that we send down to Finley Buttes. But, you know, a lot of the plastics and like, say, tires, they've done some experimentation with that. Those things secrete a lot of BTUs and can be used for that type of thing.
So we can start burning tires again.
Well, in a controlled atmosphere.
All right. Well, thanks, Tim.
Yep.
Looking forward to that. Next up is a report on the strategic planning, and Jen is going to present that to us.
Thank you very much. So, as you know, with our strategic planning process, we kicked that off in October of 2014. This was a new process that we'd undertaken, the first in about 12 years, from what I understand. We had some operation teams that met and put together draft plans, and those were different representatives from the different departments that came up with the major issues that they feel they're facing at kind of the frontline level. At the same time, we took on a process that we refer to as our operational overview document. That was really going back to, okay, when we have the issues that we're facing, but also let's look at what we do day to day, so we have something that we can put together to share with the community, with council members, in orientation processes, things like that. So those two processes ran simultaneously. Since then, our operational overviews were completed. Everybody's doing a brief overview since it has been about a year since we initially put those together. Any updates, any things that have changed in departments will be noted. And then our strategic plans are also being finalized this week. So we'll have a draft document of all of the departmental strategic plans, as well as an executive summary piece. And that's really the more digestible piece that I think the community will really appreciate. Of course, all of this will be available to the community at any time. We did in the spring of this past year talk about some of the major challenges that we were facing as we looked at the budgeting process and the budget we put together that was adopted on October 1, or for October 1. So you'll see a lot of the issues that we've discussed. This will not be new information at that point, but it'll have some of the objectives, the goals, and the annual actions and strategies that different departments will look at undertaking to start making some progress on these major issues that we've looked at. You'll see that next Monday at Council. Gary Riedner will be available to present that information, and we'll answer questions and talk through all sorts of fun stuff at that time. So just a simple update that you'll see more very soon.
So it's not stalled out, it's just,
No, we did have a bit, we slowed down a bit over the summer with the transition in the HR department and some other projects that were going on, but everything's in place and ready to go. We just needed to tie it up and print it out. So that's what we're doing now.
and will this change much? I mean, we kind of changed a little bit the way budgeting went this last year. Are we going to see a little more change as far as that goes? Or
I think you'll see more in the initiatives and objectives that we put forth looking at those major issues. The issues are, many of them are not things that will be addressed within a year. So by the time you see them again, it'll be the same issues, but it's what are the next step we're taking to tackle some of these things, and that'll be the difference you'll see year to year.
Okay. All right. So on to the next report for community branding.
Also exciting. This process has taken some time as well, but it's really been exciting to see the different partnerships and relationships that we've continued to build on with the university, with the chamber, the business community. We began this about over a year ago. There was a Department of Tourism grant that Gina Terusio, the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce, secured and asked us to participate in creating or identifying what Moscow is and how we could brand it accordingly. Really putting together a unified message for our tourism efforts, our economic development, enrollment, all the different things that make up Moscow and how we can really get the most bang for our buck in those activities. We've gone through an extensive public input process, did that over the last year, and that included stakeholder interviews. We had a community survey. Our consultants have done secret shopper visits to check out the town. They've been down quite a few times, which has been nice to see as well.
And they're from?
They're from Spokane, so fairly close. As Gene has done throughout the process, is touch base with our Department of Tourism folks to say, okay, here's what we've done, get some feedback from them to incorporate in the process as well, since they're such a major partner in the project. We just got another round of feedback that the steering committee will be addressing as we move forward. The bulk of the research work has been done, I think, to this date. Public input and all that's always so important. We made sure we paid good attention to that. So next part will be the actual messaging that will come out of that and what that looks like in conjunction with the tourism feedback and the steering committee's opinion. So we look forward to moving that ahead as well.
Guys got
Any questions?
questions about that? It's kind of a
As long as we're moving ahead.
moving forward.
It's a
and
fun
wait
one.
and see.
It's a fun project.
Well, good. Okay, next up is a report on the Southeast Moscow Sewer District status. Les McDonald's going to tell us something.
He's coming up here without papers.
Well, yeah.
He's confident in his
Pretty
position.
much, know it by heart. Good afternoon. Just a fairly brief update today, really on the status of our work at staff level and working with the sewer district on the update to the contract. As you recall, that was ultimately the direction that came out of the workshop between the district and the city council and the following discussions at the council level. We have carried forward with the original draft contract, if you will, from back in June of '94. We've gone through at least 2 revisions of that since the workshop, so that is coming along quite well. We have also had meetings with Lois Pritchett at the district president to talk about some of the issues that were identified during the workshop process, and have used those discussions to inform those new drafts of the contract itself. I'm also anticipating meeting with her again this week if we can to talk about a couple other items that we've identified here in the last week that we want to kind of get a feel for how the district is approaching this as well. And some ideas we have with respect to addressing some of those issues from the workshop, such as revenue for the district for some of their administrative costs, how we deal with some of the pass-through flow issues that we talked about in the workshop a little bit. Those are items that will come forward to this group, ultimately in the form of the council, with the draft agreement here in the next couple of weeks. I anticipate coming back, I assume, to Public Works Finance in 2 weeks with the draft agreement, and that will also, I believe, go out to the board at about the same time for them to take a look at that and see what they think of that draft in its current form. There will be a couple of what I would call the major topics to talk about within that contract. Those will be pertaining to the revenue stream for the district, how we deal with pass-through flows, how we deal with the overlap of the city and the district boundaries in certain areas. So those are some of the major items that I think we'll probably spend most of our time on, and some of the philosophy of how the two entities would like to address those topics. And then out of that, of course, we'd finalize the contract and run it through the district board, run it through the city council for approvals, presumably in December, and hopefully wrap everything up in January and be done.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. We're on our way.
So ironed out the details. It seemed at the workshop that most of the problem was that Lois and her crew didn't really want to be involved in the legal issues and things that were very time consuming, and that the city was going to take over some of those functions.
Well, maybe
for them.
perhaps not so much the legal issues, because we really can't act on their behalf as a legal review process, if you will. But there are some administrative functions that they are dealing with that we believe we can help them with, and that's part of that that discussion with the contract. What can we do from an administrative perspective that would relieve them of that burden? There are some things they will always have to do themselves. Obviously, if they're dealing with contracts between the city and the district, they have to deal with their own legal representation on that. But there are some areas that we can assist, and that's part of the discussion that's going on.
And there was going to be some step up in the cost to the patrons of the district to cover the additional expenses that the city would be dealing with. Has that been negotiated at all?
That is part of the discussion, and potentially there is an increase. In the current draft that is on my desk, there is a proposed increase in some of the surcharges that are on the regular bill for district patrons. Part of that is related to increased costs for the city that we've experienced over the last decade, related to just operating, the billing and collection side of it. And then some of it is related to district administrative cost and giving them a revenue stream to address those issues. So yes, we are anticipating some changes in those surcharges. And what we're talking about, currently the surcharge is $1 a month. We might go as high as maybe $4 a month. So, it's not a drastic thing.
Not double
but it is something that,
Not double
that is in
the
there.
entire rate. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That's
No,
what
it's
it
just,
is.
It's
if
just
you're-
on the surcharge piece.
Currently,
That's-
if you're not part of in the city, you pay double to be connected to the city.
That is correct.
Correct?
Right.
And we don't want to do that. We want to do something a little more.
The rates themselves would remain consistent with city rates. It's just a question of what amount of surcharge is there for the administration of the district, administration of the city services to the district. And that's that dollar surcharge that would vary to a couple, $3, one way or the other.
That dollar has not been changed since it was originally put in, has it?
That is correct.
And so that's been since
1981.
81, okay.
Yeah. So obviously, our expenses have changed over the last 20 years, and we're trying to address that. And so that is part of that draft that'll come to you.
All right.
I'm sure the patrons will be much happier with that than annexation.
You get what you pay for, huh?
Okay.
All right, thanks, Les. Jen, is there anything else for us?
There's nothing else.
You gentlemen have. Oh,
Should probably make one note. City facilities will be closed on Wednesday in honor of Veterans Day, except for public safety, of course, and those types of things. So that's the only other note.
Okay. You gentlemen have anything else?
No.
I guess we'll call ourselves adjourned. Thanks, everybody.